Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Culturally Complex podcast. Today, our guest adoptee is Madeline McCrae. She is someone who I actually found kind of while I was just scrolling on social media, and it was while I was still trying to look for people to talk to about their experiences being adopted. And so I figured I would reach out, and thankfully she was able and willing to come on here and talk about her adoptee experience. And so I'm very grateful for her. And she kind of talks about, what it was like being an Asian American adoptee living in Michigan and kind of just, being comfortable in her own skin in a world where everyone was different from her. So, thank you all for tuning in and enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this podcast. Today we have a special guest, Madeline McCrae. And she is somebody that I actually found on TikTok, just scrolling, and she had made a bunch of different videos talking about her experience as a Chinese adoptee, and I figured that she would be a perfect person to reach out to. And Madeline, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit here. So just tell us, who you are, where you're from, and then the question that I asked all adoptees that come on here is tell us where you were born and then where you were raised once you were adopted.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Sam. So my name is Madeline, as Sam said. So are you asking me where I'm from or from? No, I'm kidding. No, I was born in Hunan, China. And then my parents came and adopted me when I was really young. I couldn't even walk yet. I didn't have any teeth, so I was really young. And then they brought me back to the States. I was raised in a small town in northern Michigan known as Frankfort. It's in the Pinky, so it's like way up north. Mm-hmm. So that's where I grew up and I was raised.
Yeah, I love that. But yes, when you ask where you're from or where you were from, I get that question.
That was just a joke. That was a joke. I knew you would get it.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I get that all the time. So you said you were from what part in China?
Hunan.
Hunan? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time remembering so I'm probably
going to
ask it a couple times.
No, you're totally good.
But so tell us a little bit like how you came to be adopted, if you know that story, like what necessarily brought your like birth parents to give you up, and what kind of brought your adoptive parents to look into adoption as like an option for building a family.
Yeah, of course. So, unfortunately, I don't know the exact reason why I was abandoned. I mean, I could just take a guess and say, like, it's probably the one-child policy, and I wasn't born a boy, so, I mean, obviously boys are preferred over there if you're limited to one child. So, I mean, I just came out a girl, so I guess that's my guess. My best guess is because of the one-child policy. As far as my parents wanting to adopt, they had 3 biological kids before me. And then when the youngest biological reached like middle school, high school, I guess they just wanted to start over. So they came over, and they just adopted me. And then I was so good, and that was such a good experience that they went back and adopted 3 more girls from China, all probably abandoned for the same reason, I would guess, unfortunately.
And like I assume you're not like an expert at the topic, but can you explain a little bit about like what the one child policy is? Because I sort of know, but I'm not like, people listening might not know like what it is.
Yeah. So you're right. I am not an expert in it, but I guess China just had a big population issue, like overpopulation, things like that. So in order to kind of control that population, they limited each family 1 child per family. I have no idea what happened if you had like twins or like triplets. I have no idea. But in like China society, it's very patriarchal. So boys were preferred to carry on the name and everything. So if you had a boy, that was great. If you had a girl, it wasn't preferable. And I hear that unfortunately it ended up with a lot of babies being like thrown in dumpsters and even like aborted, really unfortunate things like that because they want a boy. So that's my understanding. And now I think it lifted not that long ago, because they're in a population crisis because everyone just didn't want girls. So now they're kind of seeing the consequences of their action.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said you were from what part in Michigan?
Frankfurt.
Frankfurt.
So it's, this teeny tiny, predominantly white town in
Yeah.
northern Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, can you tell us a little bit about living there and growing up there?
Yeah. So my sisters and I were like the only Asian people in this teeny tiny town. It's like 1,300 people. It's a very touristy town in the summer. So in the summer it gets really populated and more people of color come up. But year round we were like the only Asians. And then for school, it was just my sisters and I. And then there was like maybe like one black kid, maybe one Hispanic kid. So it was very white, predominantly white. Yeah. The bullying wasn't bad for my sisters for some reason. I don't know. And it wasn't terrible for me, but I would get like little things like here and there. I would end up crying in the bathroom during lunch. Sometimes that sounds really depressing. But I'm a really sensitive person. So when I hear that, like so-and-so said behind my back, like I'm a piece of like Chinese, like shit or something like that got to me, things like that. And, like people on my own cross country team didn't want me sitting at the table because, I was like this stupid Asian girl, things like that. So it was, I had like little moments like that, and I will probably never I'll forgive them maybe, I don't know, but I'll probably never forget it. And it's still like burned into my head. So like little things like that. Also the eating dogs and cats thing, like don't come over to my house because I have a dog, stuff like that. I did experience things like that. And I know obviously all my friends were white. So for a long time, I always wanted to just like look Caucasian, like look white. I wanted like lighter hair. I seriously wanted to like go like brunette because like all my friends, anything. I just kind of wanted to hide like my Asian features, So, and that's something that I'm not proud of because obviously I fully embrace it today and I love it. So that was kind of my experience in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I'm sure, did you grow up did you go to like a predominantly like white?
Yes. I grew up in a very, very small town in Eastern Kentucky of like 7,000 people.
Oh, geez.
So, but the thing is, like, it was so small that like everybody kind of knew each other. So it wasn't necessarily. So it wasn't like, I don't necessarily remember ever being like told anything about like my race or anything. And like I tell a lot of people, like I feel like I've mentioned it a couple times when I've recorded these episodes, like I kind of forgot that I was not white because I was surrounded by white people all the time.
Actually, like I would wake up in the mirror and like I'd go get ready and I'd be like, you're not Asian, like you're a white girl. Like there are, okay, thank you. Because when I tell other people that, they like stare at me and they're like, what do you mean? You forget you're Asian. And like, no, I totally, because I would act like that. And I do say I'm very whitewashed, you know.
I'm the same way. And like the thing is too, like there was like actual like people that were from Hispanic countries or like in Latin America or wherever that lived in the community, but like I never felt like I could really approach them because I wasn't like, I looked the part, but I wasn't, you know.
Yeah. Like you look Guatemalan on the outside, but like inside, like you're very white, you know, like that's, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
that
like,
makes sense. I get that.
Yeah. Like growing up in that culture, it's just like, oh yeah, well, I guess like assimilated to this so much that it's just like, oh, well, like, it took me to like getting to college to like really start looking into like my culture as a Guatemalan, and it's taken me like a long time even to realize like, you know, it's like all of that shapes who I am now. And so it's just like, you know, like I'm still working on figuring out, you know, exactly where I fit, but I've definitely made strides toward that for sure.
No, that's awesome. That's super awesome.
Yeah. And so I guess another question I have is like, what age did you start to like realize what adoption like meant to you, and like, you know, even like what it was like, what it actually means to be adopted, like you weren't necessarily a biological child of your parents and that stuff.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out where to start. So like preschool, let's go preschool. I mean, I remember going into school and stuff like that, and my mom would tell me like, okay, you're adopted. You know, adoption was a word that was always thrown around in my house, even when I was a little kid. So I feel like I understood that I was born in China and my parents came and got me and they took me back to the States. So I feel like I want to say I understood that, but it was more of the other things that go into that I didn't really understand. So for instance, like there's like pieces of brown in my hair. I just assumed that came from my mom. Like I was little, like I just assumed that came from my mom or things like that. Or like little facial features, like my nose came from like my dad, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't really understand that. And then also it was super confusing because my last name is McCrae and that's like Scottish. So my mom would tell me like, yeah, you've got some Scottish in you. You got some Irish. Our family's Irish. Our family's Scottish. Our family's this and that. We got a little bit of Italian. So I'd go and tell people at my school, like, yeah, I'm not just Chinese, guys. Like I'm white. I've got Italian and Scottish. And like, they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
So that part really confused me growing up. So I would tell people, I was telling people through elementary school, like, oh yeah, I'm Scottish too. So like that part really took me a while to understand. But all through my childhood, like I understood that I was adopted. And then especially, I went back 3 other times to go get my sister. So I did fully understand like what it meant to be adopted because like I would go along and to go get my sisters. So I mean that's kind of how it like ended up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how old did you say you were when you were like adopted? Like I know you said you were like
really
young.
young. Oh gosh. Couldn't walk, no teeth. Couple months.
Yeah.
Couple months. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was.
How about you?
I was 8 months old whenever I
Okay.
came over. But my siblings, I think, were younger than me, so they were like, I think
Oh
my
my gosh!
brother.
Wait. How many other siblings do you have that are adopted?
I have 3 siblings, and all of them are adopted from Guatemala. I don't think any of
Gosh,
us
I
are
didn't know
like.
that.
Yeah, I guess
What?
I should have
Oh my
mentioned
gosh!
that.
I had no idea. That's so cool.
Yes, I guess I should have mentioned that, but like none of us like are blood related. I don't
No,
think.
same. Yeah, same. That's something that confused people too.
Yes, because my brother, everybody says that my brother and I look so similar. And
Oh
for
my
the longest time, I'm
gosh.
like, I could
No.
not see it. But then eventually I was like, I can kind of see what you mean. Like, we have the
Yeah.
same, like, nose. We have the same kind
Yeah.
of, like, smile and teeth. And so it's like, okay, I see what you mean now. like, um, but yeah, they were all, like, they were younger than me. I think I was, I'm the second oldest, but I was the oldest one whenever I was adopted. Like I was 8 months, and then I think my older sister was 6 months when she was brought over, and then my brother and sister, they're the same age, but they're a couple months apart.
Mhm.
But they were 6, maybe 4 months.
Mhm.
I don't know. They were
Okay.
like
Yeah.
really tiny.
Yeah.
but
Yeah. That's so cool though.
yeah, and
Mhm.
so I guess the next question I have, which I guess you've kind of touched on, but was like when did you realize that your experiences were going to be different than that of your peers, and you know
Mhm.
just how much of a difference it was
Mhm.
for living there and kind of having a different experience from everybody?
Yeah, I feel like the older I got, the more I understood that I was different. I'm trying to think. When did I realize my experiences would be different? I want to say like grade school, maybe, because I feel like around third grade was when I started getting the little digs at me. Like I
Yeah.
remember playing on the playground one time, and they were like, we were playing tag, and they were like, "Oh, stay away from the Chinese girl," and I was like, "Wait, what? What?" So like it started then. I want to say. I remember also saying to people, because I don't know if it's the same for you. Do you know like your real birthday and stuff like that?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Well, you're
That
lucky.
yeah, but that
You're so
kind of gets
lucky.
into like another
Yeah.
conversation too of like
Yeah.
I don't know if like because there was like I kind of talked about the issue with adoption and like making profit, so like they don't know if certain people from Guatemala were like abducted or like
Oh gosh.
trafficked into like just getting put up for adoption for money. And so I assume I know my actual birthday and stuff, but there's like a
Oh.
probably a small chance that it might not be my actual birthday, but
Oh, okay.
I just go with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. No, but I remember telling someone because I did not. This is another thing I didn't really fully understand was the birthday thing because I don't know it. They just like guess, and I just was given a random birthday.
Yeah.
So I told someone in my class when I was like 6 or 7, like, oh, I have 2 birthdays, and they were like, wait, what? That's impossible. And I was like, well, yeah, like I have a birthday that was given to me, and then I have another birthday, but we just don't know when it is. So like experiences like that, and then I remember my senior year of high school when we were doing the yearbook, we were tasked with like baby pictures and then like the day you were born and the time you were born. And I was like, well, what the heck do I do for this? Because like I don't know, but that makes me so mysterious. So, so experiences like that, I feel like, and then I like middle school and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I'm going like all over the place. My thoughts are like here and there. I haven't thought about this for a while. But like as I got further into like late elementary, like early middle school, I feel like I had more of these like thoughts like, oh, where's my birth mom? Like, what if she's dead? What if my dad's dead? Like, am I a product of like rape? Like, I had all these like super intrusive thoughts, and I was just really comfortable. I wasn't really comfortable talking to anyone. I mean, I could talk to my siblings about it, but they were like really young, so that would go over their head. And I was like, well, I can't tell I could tell my friends, but like, what am I going to get out of that? So I feel like it was times like that when I was like, okay, this is something that none of my friends or anyone in my school can relate to. So it was kind of difficult, honestly. Like I was just having these conversations in my head. So I feel like that was another moment when I was like, oh crap, like this isn't something that the normal person has to go through, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like kind of to this isn't one of the questions I had sent you.
No,
but, like,
no, please, yeah, please go off script. This is, yeah, nice.
But I, like, you talked about, like, having kind of people make comments and digs at you, and, I know whenever, like, COVID started coming around, like, there was a lot of stuff with, like, Asian American people and,
that
like,
was
having
scary.
that, like, did you have any experiences with that?
Oh
like,
my God.
having to,
it was a scary time for me because like I would open up my phone and I'd be like, oh, another Asian like hate crime, and my mom would send me stuff. And at the time I was in Grand Rapids doing like my undergrad and stuff. So it was like a biggish city, and she'd always be like, okay, put sunglasses on, put a hood up, like do not show your Asian features. And as sad as it sounds, like I did that for however long I had to, because I was scared. And even on campus, like I was scared, like, can I swear on here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was scared shitless to like sneeze, like, or like cough. I'd be like, oh my God, are they gonna like, stuff like that. And then I made a couple like TikToks and stuff like that. Not necessarily COVID related, but like I'd get these little like snide comments like, oh, well, thanks so much for COVID. Or like, if it weren't for you people, we wouldn't have COVID right now. Or like stuff like that. And like, there were all these new insults that I'd never heard of, like, like bad eater, stuff like that. Like, yeah.
This is crazy.
It was like, honestly a time.
Yeah. And like, the thing is like, people say that stuff and it's just like, I've grown up here my whole life. Like,
I know. I'm like, come on. It's like, do you want to know how many diseases did white people start? You want to go into that? Like,
yeah. And so it's just like, I don't know how you think that, one group of people, like one person even could like
exactly
stand for a whole group of people, and like, I'm like, you just don't know anything about anybody. Like I've had people say to me like, oh well, once we build the wall you're gonna get deported and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm a resident of Kentucky and Virginia. Like I was like, literally I've been grown up around like white people, yeehaw, MAGA supporters my whole life. So like it's like, I don't know how you think that that's okay to say to anybody when you don't know their stories. Like,
seriously, it's just, I know.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of leads to like another question I had, which was, did you ever feel a disconnect from everybody growing up, like in a certain way? Yeah, talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit if you can.
Yeah. So like I said before, like my parents had like three biological kids before adopting the four of us. Um, so that's like seven kids right there. You know, how do you, as a parent, divide your attention between like those seven kids without singling one out to make them feel like the more important one? So when I was like a preteen, angsty teenager kind of, I remember I'd throw things in my parents' face like, "Oh, you love like so and so more because you know that's like your actual, you know, like that's your DNA, that's your flesh and blood." So obviously I'd say that in the heat of the moment, but like I would stop and I'd like stand back and I'm like, wait, that actually like kind of makes sense. Like they, like that's not the point. They did not favor anyone. They really did try their best, but you know, it was those intrusive thoughts again, like stepping back and being like, oh, well, what if that's actually the case? What if they actually do it? Like a very small part of them favors, you know, this child because they're actually blood related, you know?
Yeah.
So things like that, I would feel disconnected. And I mean, I love all my siblings. But I mean, I would be lying if I said that I didn't feel not disconnected, but like there are times when I'm like I know they love me, I love them, but like it's just so weird to know that we're the only way we're related is because like a piece of paper tells us we are. So
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's I don't know if that makes sense. But it is weird because I don't know anyone else in the world right now that like shares my DNA because I just don't know.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like a lone island, you know, just like floating around. So I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
experienced that,
Um,
but that's just kind of how I feel
yeah,
sometimes.
I've kind of felt that like if I like deep thought it, then I'm like, oh yeah, it's kind of like what you said. Like the only reason we're related is because of a piece of paper. But like
Yeah,
if I, you know, I think when you don't think about it and you're like, oh well, I love my siblings, I love my
yeah, I
family.
do.
Like
Yeah,
you know, it's just like I feel like that. You know, your family's your family. It doesn't
yeah,
matter. You know,
exactly,
it's the people you grew up around, the people that
exactly. Yeah, that
you know.
raised you, you know.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, also kind of did you ever feel a disconnect like with your close friends growing up, or like even like once you went to like college, like did you ever
Mm-hmm.
feel like there was some sort of like disconnect between you all, even though you might be best friends, like there's still stuff
Mm-hmm.
that they just don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So did you ever feel that in any
Yeah.
capacity?
Yeah. I kind of floated around like in high school, like elementary, high school. Like I would float around people depending on like if I liked them, if they liked me at the time. I don't know if I'd say I had like a best like I had good friends, but like not like a best friend or like a designated group of people I could hang out with. But I feel like that just kind of goes back to what I was saying before about not wanting to burden my friends with like all the thoughts that I have about, you know, my birth parents, any biological siblings that I could know about. Maybe I don't have any, maybe they're like dead or like how I came in, like why did I come in, like, you know, like why I came into the world. Was it through like rape or like an affair thing?
Yeah.
In my head though, I like to imagine that my birth parents were very wealthy people, you know. I
Yeah.
don't know, they were very successful people, you know. So I didn't really want to burden them with that kind of. So I feel like that kind of goes back to it. But actually, as I went into college, I picked again a predominantly white Christian college. I don't know why I did. Oh, actually, I do know why I did that. It was scholarship money. That's why.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was surrounded by white Dutch Christian Reform people galore. That was my entire campus. So I mean, I made good friends there. I actually met another person through like Instagram, and we initially bonded over our love for Taylor Swift, and,
I love
and
Taylor
then
Swift.
oh my god, okay. I love that. Okay, we got to
Yes.
come back and talk about that sometime
Yes.
off this podcast
Yes.
because I love
Yes.
that. But no, I found out that she too was adopted from China. I don't remember what province, but she had a similar upbringing and background. And then my final year of college, she actually introduced me to two other people who were also adopted from China. So we all have this little Chinese adoptee support group thing. I mean, we literally have like a group chat and we just like throw stuff in there, like our intrusive thoughts and stuff like that about our adoption. And that was really the kind of group that I honestly have been looking for like my entire life. I feel like if I had that group of people in high school and we could all experience that growing up, like I feel like I'd be in a much better mental state than I am now. Because I feel like I'm still, because I feel like I thought about all these thoughts way later in life because I just kind of pushed them to the back burner. But after meeting this group of Chinese adoptees, we are all able to get together and just kind of trauma dump together. And we all know what we're talking about. We all know the little inside jokes and we all say some very dark humor things, you know, because that's the only way that we cope. So it's honestly like, they're like my therapists. Like if I have like any issues, like I'm like, do you guys like ever feel this way? And they're like, well, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that all like meant. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. Like you know, in kind of researching for this like podcast project or whatever, like I, you know, found organization. It's like adoptees with Guatemalan roots, and like it's just like a whole like I think it's just like a whole group of people that just like were all adopted from Guatemala. And you know, they talk about their experiences, they like spotlight different people on their social media and everything. And you know, I'm not like super close with any of them, but we all like, I follow like a bunch of people from it, and like it's just almost nice to know that there's other people out there that are sharing the same experience with you. And so like I definitely I get that for sure. Like even though like, you know, we were adopted from different like countries and like cultures and stuff, like it's just like, you know, I still feel like we even have like a connection because like we understand what adoption means and like how it affects somebody and everything like that. And so another thing I wanted to ask was like, did your parents like ever address that, you know, you being adopted is gonna like be different from like other people's stories that live around you, like all the the people that were from Michigan and everything, but also like even to you know, other adoptees that their experiences might be different than yours and stuff?
I don't think they ever sat me or my siblings down to give us like the talk about, you know, going to school and meeting people from different backgrounds, because it was a very like white town. So, I mean, I know I've said that multiple times, but they never like sat us down and they were like, okay, well, you might encounter, you know, like racism and stuff like I was never given that heads up. I just kind of like learned as I went along, and I wish someone kind of gave me a heads up, like, hey, you know, people might, you know, pull back their eyes because they think it's funny, or they might, you know, joke about the cats and dog thing. No, not really. And then I didn't really meet any other people that had a similar story as I did until I went to college, and I was like, wow, there's actually like a fair amount of people that are adopted, and we all have kind of similar stories and similar feelings, and we just like to trauma dump on each other. So I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sorry. I don't know if that does.
It does. Yeah, I guess like, you know, I also never really got any heads up, kind of like what you said about like what it's gonna be different for me, like being around all my friends and stuff.
Were you the only person of color, or like one of the only in your school or whatever?
Yeah, I think there was 117 people in my class. I think
that's not
around
that big at all. Yeah.
No, and there was like 5 or less people of color in there.
Oh God, that's rough.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Which I guess for me it's like different too, because like everywhere it was so small, like everybody kind of knew each other. It's like nobody ever really said anything to me, like at least not to my face that I know of. I mean, just like I grew up around everybody in the town basically. Like, it was just so small, and so like, well, at least the people that I like talked to, like nobody ever really said anything, because
Mm-hmm.
I think in a way too, like I feel like they forgot that I was brown because I like was around them so much and just was like
Yeah.
doing all the same things and doing all the same activities. So it's just kind of like, oh well, it's just Sam. Like he's not
Yeah.
different. And it did take me for like moving to a different place, because like I live in Virginia now. I moved like right after high school, and
Mm-hmm.
so going from that small town where like everybody knew each other and like nobody ever really said anything to going to like a bigger town, like it's like I don't know how many people are here actually.
Yeah.
But like where I live, it's called like the Tri-Cities, so there's like three kind of
Mm-hmm.
towns all about 30-ish minutes away from each
Mm-hmm.
other. It's definitely like, you know, I've had experiences where people have like followed me around like the stores that I'm shopping
Oh
at,
my God.
and also just like,
Oh my
you know,
God.
we're kind of in like the Bible Belt, so
Oh shit.
there's,
That probably doesn't
yeah,
help.
it
Oh my
doesn't.
God.
And it's not even that people have like come up and said stuff to me, but it's just like the way they talk about certain things. It's like, okay, do you forget that I'm like a person, a non-white person sitting here, and you're saying some of the like most racist
Oh my
stuff?
God.
And even if it's not just like about Hispanic people, it could be about like any race that isn't white, and it's just like that's not okay to say.
Seriously.
But at
Like it's
this,
2024.
yeah, but at the same time, like it's like nerve wracking to say something, because like, you know, it's weird because like I know I have a voice and I should say something to like try to stop
No, I
people
get
from
that.
being so horrible, but
I know I
at
get
the
that.
same time you don't want to like risk your own safety. Like what if they don't react
I
well to
don't
you
like they could
saying,
have a gun. Like you
yes,
don't know. They could
exactly,
have a gun.
yes,
Oh my God.
yeah.
I'm so sorry about that though.
Yeah, it's been an experience for sure, but I've grown and, you know, kind of learned how to deal with it and manage it. So
So you were never given any warning like, oh, this could happen.
no. And I
Oh
feel
my
like it's
God.
the
I'm so
same way for a
sorry.
lot of different adoptees from wherever, like, you know, and I've talked to my mom about this before, and you know, she even said like, now looking at it, she said I should have been probably more prepared for, you know, letting you know that your experience is going to be different because you are a different like ethnicity than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, and she said the adoption agencies also just like don't even talk about it or like try to prepare you for that
Mm-hmm.
in any way. And so that actually does kind of like lead into another question that
Yeah.
I want to ask too, is like, could parents do anything differently to like help their children like understand that adoption is going to kind of shape their whole life?
Yeah. I totally agree with what you said. I feel like it should be kind of the parents' responsibility. I mean, they're adopting this child from a different country. I mean, the least they can do is like sit them down when they're old enough and just say like, you know, you look different from us. It doesn't mean we love you any less. You're one of our own, and you know your story is probably going to be different than like your classmates and your peers. I just feel like they could just educate their kids about adoption, what it means, and then the culture that they were born in, or like the country that they were born in. My parents, they did. I will hand it to them. They did try to incorporate Chinese culture. I mean, we'd go and celebrate Chinese New Year and stuff like that, and they would give us those like language learning videos where you learn
Mm-hmm.
to say certain things in Mandarin. So they did try. They did try when we were younger and stuff like that. But I never, like you and I said, I just was never like sat down and told that my eyes are kind of different. I might look a little different. So yeah, I was never like told that, but you know, they
Yeah.
did the best that they could.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what adoptive parents should be able to do. Just like tell them and give them a heads up, give them a
Yes.
warning. Yeah.
Yes. And you know, I think I realize now that I like skipped over one of my questions for
No,
you.
you're good. You're
But you
good. You're good.
talking about like, you know, kind of your parents making an effort with like incorporating your culture from China into like you living here.
Yeah.
But did you like ever feel like you had a big disconnect from like the culture in China? And, you know, I guess like meeting other people that were from China. Like I feel like I've seen a couple of your videos, like, you know, people that are like from China and come up to you and speak Mandarin and all this stuff, and it's just like, you know, did you ever feel like you were really kind of, I guess, separate from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I still feel pretty disconnected from it now. I mean, I was making like those like Trader Joe frozen dumplings, and I was like, I wonder what my Asian ancestors are thinking right now. So no, I do feel super disconnected, and if I'm being honest, I feel more white than Asian, like
Yeah.
very, very, very much. And so do my adopted friends from China too. Our little group, we're very we're very whitewashed, and I think I'd be right to speak for all of them to say that like we're all probably more white than we are Asian, and we probably forget that we're Asian half the time.
Yes.
I will say though, when I go to Chinatown, I feel very, very Asian and very like included. But I mean, as long as they don't come up and talk to me and realize that I can't speak a lick of Mandarin or Cantonese.
Yeah.
But no, I did feel disconnected growing up, and I still kind of feel it now. I really do wish I was bilingual and could speak, you know, my native tongue. I definitely do. But yeah, unfortunately, I do still feel disconnected.
Yeah.
And it's not my parents' fault. It's not my parents' fault. It's just the culture that I grew up with and like the people I grew up with. So I don't blame them at all. I know that they feel guilty because I told them I was whitewashed one time, and they were kind of like sad about that. Like, oh, like what could we, you know?
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely like where I grew up, who I hung out with, that definitely shaped who I am today. And that just so happens to be more like white and American.
Yeah. Which I guess I wonder too, like, have you ever been back to China, or I know you said you went to get your siblings, but
Yeah.
like, have you all ever gone just to like, you know, visit besides going for like that purpose specifically?
No. So the last time I was in China was when I was 11, and that was to go get my my last sister. But no, we have not been back since as a group to go like vacation. So no, that was the last time.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I don't I feel like there's been opportunities for me to go back, and a lot of it is just like I feel very hesitant because I also like,
No, same.
you know, I don't want to go and then not like be prepared, I guess. Like, I don't speak Spanish very well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't speak Spanish well. I don't know much about like the food. Like, I'm nervous to go down, and then like people are gonna like, I obviously look the part, so people are gonna come up to me, and I don't want to like stand there like a deer in headlights and just kind of be like
No, same.
So
No, I
I
get
guess
that.
like nerves have been kind of what hold me back, I guess,
Yeah.
from going back to
No, that
visit.
makes complete sense. That absolutely makes sense. And I know that China isn't really welcoming towards tourists, so I'm also scared to go back for that reason. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I guess kind of what I want to like end on, since we've kind of been like talking about it, is like, you know, what advice would you give to adoptees who still might be trying to like figure out, you know, who they are, where they fit in, all that kind of stuff?
I just want to assure them that they're not alone. And I felt like I was alone for the longest time until I started, you know, like posting about it. And then I found a bunch of people that kind of felt the same. And then it only helped me more when I found like a solid group of people. I understand that it might be hard to find people with, you know, a similar background, but I've had so many people send me, and even professors, because I talked to my professors in college about this. I mean, I was getting resources, like online resources, different support groups I could talk to online, podcasts like this that focus on that. So I would encourage any adoptee to go and like look out for those resources, because you are absolutely not alone. That would be like the biggest takeaway, is just there are so many things. There are so many like different tools that are out there, and I just really encourage them to take the full advantage of that. So that would be like my main one. I feel like don't keep it bottled up inside, because I did for more than half of my life, and it's like catching up to me now. And I wish that I was exploring these feelings as I at a younger age, and not just when I like got to college and stuff. So those would be like my two main points, I guess.
Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And yes, like I totally know what you mean. Like, people are not alone. That's also why I wanted to like do this,
And I love
particularly
that. I
this
absolutely
format.
love that.
Yeah, because I wanted to, give people a place to like tell their stories, and like maybe somebody will hear it and say, oh, that's like similar to me, and, realize that there's so many other people that are very much like, might not walk the same exact path as somebody else,
exactly.
but run the same vein for sure. And, I think that's like super important to have, definitely.
And just having like good friends in your corner, like even if they're not, like even if they're like not adopted, I feel like just having a good support system, whether it be like your family or like your siblings or like friends. So I just feel like, I don't know, having a good support system like that. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, it does for sure. So I guess that kind of, wraps up everything that I was wanting to talk about. But I guess real quick, before I quit recording, what's your favorite Taylor Swift album and Taylor Swift song? Since we both love Taylor Swift.
I'm such a Midnights person. The newness factor has not worn off. I think my number one song from last year was Maroon. I fucking love that song. So good. So good.
So good.
So I don't know. Midnights has so many bangers. It's got that. It's got Labyrinth. It's got Dear Reader. I'm sorry. Like all of these like very gatekeepy songs that I love to gatekeep. So wait, what about you?
My favorite album is Speak Now, but I think that's just because like I listened to it so much as a kid. Like my sister was a big Taylor Swift fan, so I just listened to whatever she listened to, and then that kind of just turned me into a fan growing up.
Oh my god, I love that.
But my favorite song at the moment would probably be Right Where You Left Me from Evermore, which is like a different shift from like Speak Now.
That's so good. No, that's such a good song. Yes. No, 23 and delusional, like that's me,
Exactly. I feel that in my soul.
Oh my god. That's awesome though.
Yeah.